So my name's Steph and I co-founded a hyperlocal website for the area I live in Wolverhampton, which is Wentzfield. So that's already pointed out. The website came around, I just live in Wentzfield. I don't work for the local sector, I work for Nick now, so I don't work for a housing organisation, I didn't work for the council. It came around for several different things. My partner moved into the area to live with me from what he always refers to as a more affluent area, or perceivably more affluent. And we moved and it was lovely, and within a few weeks of him living with me, he was walking down the street and people were saying hello and good morning to him. He's 6'3", he's big and beardy, and he's more used to people walking across the road to avoid him. So it came to quite a shock to him when he came to somewhere where he had that sense of community. And then we were a victim of a council's consultation process, and I say victim because we weren't listened to, and they closed my son's school. And we felt really strongly that there should be somewhere that people in our community could come online and talk to each other, and that we would never become a victim of that kind of consultation process again. Adding to the fact that we knew there was a lovely community around where we lived, and we wanted to share that with people because quite frequently people could be cynical about where they live, or there's nothing to do around here, there's nothing, and it's because people have lived there their whole lives and just get used to what's on their doorstep. We wanted to show people that was more to it. So we started off by trying to look at maybe setting up a forum, some kind of chat room where people could get together and talk. And then we moved from, well, how do we advertise the forum? What's going to bring people here to talk? So we set up a Facebook page, a website, with a resource page that we worked hard on, and it listed all the local amenities. And then we were like, well, what's going to pull people to the resource page? So we added a news feed. And then we were like, now we've done all this, how do we tell people that this is here? And at the time, Facebook was fairly new. So we set up a Facebook page as well. We launched it 3 years ago, in fact 3 years ago next week, about 10 o'clock in my bedroom, it was my living room, and invited about 30 people that I knew locally to join it. Within a couple of weeks we'd gone up to about 100 people on our Facebook page, and we kind of stayed there. And for a while we were talking to the abyss. No one was using the forum on the website. People were reading the website because we could see through Google Analytics, and we were just sharing the news articles through our Facebook page, and it felt for a while we were talking into a void. We would put information out there, we knew people was reading it, but there was no interaction, nothing coming back. And then gradually, over about 6 months, our numbers drifted up and we went to 400-500, and people started responding to us, leaving comments, always on the Facebook page, which was shocking because we use the Facebook page to try and direct people to the websites, and actually people wanted to use the Facebook page because that's where they already were. They started leaving us comments, and they started talking to us as people. We'd always made it clear that James and I were volunteers and we were doing this, and we weren't an organisation, and people would respond to us and call us by our names, and it's really strange when you talk to about 300 people that you don't know and they're calling you by your name. But we did that for about 12 months and it was fine, and we were building up a nice little bit of momentum. And then last summer, so 2 years after we started it up, we hit 1,000 users, and we were like, wow, that's a lot of people, where have these all come from? And then the world went mad, and everywhere started rioting, and the riots came to Wolverhampton. And we felt really strongly when people were coming to our Facebook page and trying to share information between themselves about the riots, that what they should have from us was accurate information. So we used all the networks that we'd built doing this for the last 2 years to bring together useful information. So where we'd been talking and tweeting with the police officers, we'd find them and ask them to clarify information. I worked in the town centre at that point and had access to the security radio system, so I was listening to what was going on in the town centre, and so when people were coming on our page going, the bus station's being smashed up, I could say, no, it's not. When they go in, Primark's being looted, my answer is, why on earth would anyone loot Primark? But it gave us the opportunity to dispel the rumours, dispel the myths, and actually be useful. And what we found was our Facebook numbers, because nowhere else, none of the housing providers, none of the council, not even the police, because obviously the police were on the ground dealing with the problems. They were good all the day, but when it actually kicked off, they were doing their job. No one was online to share information, to calm things down. And we had a massive spike in our numbers, and in the 7 days, including the riots, we had over 236,000 impressions of our Facebook information. 150,000 of those were in the 2 days that the riots were occurring in Wolverhampton. And what that meant was, in the month from the July when we hit the 1,000 to the end of the August after the riots, our Facebook numbers had doubled. We were well over 2,000. And since then we've actually snuck up, and as of the 12th of July we actually hit 3,401. I was just talking to Nick beforehand actually, that's now run. We had an incident yesterday which has actually made the numbers jump again, and we're actually at 3,455. Every time something happens locally, the numbers jump again. But what happened was we got to 2,000 people. We ended up with over 1,000 on our Twitter stream, and we got all these people that we'd engaged with, and we thought, well, what else can we do now to be useful? It wasn't enough that we were just sharing information or sharing news, or what, it wasn't even news, just things happening. We're not a newspaper, we weren't writing articles, we weren't doing exposés, we were getting information and sharing it. And we decided we wanted to try something else, and because we built relationships with the local partners, we decided that actually now people on our Facebook page are talking among themselves as well, no longer just talking to James and I for responses. They actually started responding to each other. Because other local partners were using us to share information to, we wanted to be more. So we started attending the police and community together meetings, PATS meetings. And after the second meeting, we started live tweeting, much to the disappointment of some of the people that didn't understand the technology, but we started live tweeting them 10 months ago. We've got another meeting next week, which again we will go and live tweet at. And what we do is we became an outlet for the meetings. We literally just, as events go in, as questions are asked, as issues are raised, we'd tweet them. As policing priorities were set, we'd tweet them. And then the next morning we'd pull them all together in Spotify, Storyfy even, stick them on the website and share those with the people on the Facebook page. Both of our audiences on Twitter and on Facebook could see the information. And that was brilliant. And then after 3 or 4 times of doing that, what happened is this became interactive. People suddenly picked up on the fact that we were live tweeting from these meetings, and while we were in the room listening to the police and the partners talking to us, people started tweeting us questions to ask on their behalf. So we suddenly became a conduit for the community. They'd come to us and say, could you do this? Could you ask this? Could you find out about this? Could you ask so-and-so to come and tell me this? And we would literally stand up and we'd very sensitively go, we've got another question for you. And it was so incredibly well received. The LNP, which is the local neighbourhood partnership in our area, are now looking at rolling this out in all of their constituencies, because it had been that useful for them as a communication tool and reaching an audience that they never did before. So we wanted to take that step further. How could we bring together the people that we were talking to online with the people that we were talking to in the room? So we held the UK's first online PATS meeting. Wasn't a public meeting. Normally the PAT meetings are public, you end up with 20, maybe 25 people turn up, you end up with a TRA coming and shouting and the community association crying because their funding's being cut or whatever. But what we did is we held it at 7 o'clock one autumn night, and we brought together the local police sergeant, the Director of Housing for Wolverhampton Homes, which is the ALMO that deals with Wolverhampton Council's housing stock, and a couple of people from the local neighbourhood partnership in a room, used Cover It Live, publicised it for the week before, and sat back and crossed our fingers and hoped people logged on to ask questions. On the night, where traditional meetings attract about 20 people, we had 110 people log in, with 87 questions asked and 91 responses given. It was a resounding success, and funny enough, yesterday I received an email from the police sergeant saying, when we're doing another one. So hopefully we'll be doing another one sometime soon. What all this did for us was what Nick pointed out in his was build social capital. We suddenly had a platform. We had all of these people that wanted to come and talk to us, partners, community, and everyone coming together. And we just tenaciously just dug away and tried things because we could. And people started seeing the things we were doing, not as James and I messing around on the internet, but actually started taking ownership of the spaces for themselves. And we've had instances now where the community have literally used our platforms to arrange, well, you can see here, this was a charity collection that somebody made with the Scouts, and they'd ended up with a load of extra stuff. Was there anyone else that needed it? With no intervention from us and no intervention from any of the partners, they organised that between themselves and gave it away. We've had instances where there's been house fire. There was a really serious house fire last year where a mum and her 3 daughters lost everything. They were on holiday and their house burnt down while they were away. And in 48 hours, we put an appeal out on the website, and within 48 hours we collected 14 black bags of clothing. Offers from 2 local companies to refurbish their house, and a local estate agent who waived all fees to make sure they got back into a house before Christmas, just because we asked. So people started taking ownership of their community. And what happened, we managed to take this and actually move it offline. We've always had a real nice community where we live, and we'd have summer fairs and Christmas events and things like that with traditionally about 200 to 300 people turn up. This year we formed a proper committee to put something in place, and it was ourselves at WV11, it was the Community Association, it was the Tenants and Residents Association, it was the John Ambulance, it was the police, it was the AMP, it was anyone that wanted to get involved. And we ran it completely ad hoc voluntary basis. If you turned up and volunteered to do something, you did it, and we just had to trust you that you were going to do it, and if you didn't turn up, well, no one's holding you to it anyway. And what happened for the Jubilee celebrations this year, we held a fun day, and we had 1,500 people from our community turn up, which was a record for our area. And we're really, really pleased that in the 3 years since we've been running WV11, we started off inviting 30 people, and it's gone in 3 years from that to 3,000 to having an event where we can draw that many people and see that many smiles on people's faces. And the best thing about all this is it can be done anywhere. Anybody who's got the will as a community member to want to do this can. The tools are free. You might need some support learning how to use them, but you can do it. It's important, I feel, and I think I have to say this with housing associations, that you can't replicate this. Had Wolverhampton Homes, who's my Elmo, come to me and said, do this, I'd have gone, you've got a marketing budget, pay for it yourself. But because I was a citizen and I cared enough about where I live and I wanted to, I did it. And I'm not saying we didn't do it without support, because we went on and we managed to make it happen because we had so much support. We had the police on side, we had the housing organisation side. In fact, Wolverhampton Homes changed their press policy to include not only journalists but also bloggers. So when we phone them up with a question, they know our communities at our heart, and they will always answer it. And in fact, Kate uses the communications manager, who once told Nick, which I heard in an interview Nick did with her, she actually sometimes prioritises James and I with WV11 over the local newspaper, because she knows why they're after a story. We're after improving our community. So you can support and help people who want to do this in your areas too.